Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry. It's your boy Karagol Gaming, and you know how we do things around here, yeah, man. So last episode, what happened last episode? Shion met up with Mion to get filled in on what she missed during her absence. And during the tip section, we caught a little glimpse of Satsuko being abused by her aunt and Satoshi sticking up for her. So what I'm assuming this episode is going to be about is more about Satoshi, which is something that we have been wondering about for so many arcs now. Let's get to it. It's a very quiet afternoon, as always. Since I can't go outside as myself, I have to match schedules with Mion when I go shopping. I've gotten used to it by now, so it's no longer a hassle. Because of this, I naturally have to buy things in bulk. Today, I shuttled between shops in my home.
あれは買った、これも買った。ああ、そうだ。今日って100円セールの日じゃなかったっけ？忘れてた。
Being in a good mood, I spun around with my arms spread out. I felt like a little whirlwind. My arm hit a motorcycle parked on the sidewalk. It obviously wasn't where it was supposed to be.
何こんなとこに止めてるの誰？
I gave it a kick with no hesitation. There were 3 motorcycles lined up there in a row. This scene seems very familiar. They all fell like dominoes. It was a beautiful sight. This is fun, I thought. Being in such a good mood made me leave my guard down. I didn't realize that the owners of the motorcycles were right nearby. They looked pretty scary. Yep. We have seen this scene before. I think it was Keiichi who accidentally bumped into one of the motorcycles and he got ganged up by a lot of Okinomiyans until some Hinamizawa villagers came to his rescue, I think. But then, it was Shion that saved him at that point, wasn't it? They grabbed me by the neck and dragged me into a dark alley. Hello? Where is this going? Then they called me all kinds of names. Everything was happening too quickly for me to grasp what was going on. Whoa. They can't really talk properly. I didn't have a clue what the fuck they were saying to me. I had to translate their alien tongue into normal human words in order to understand. We are very upset because you knocked down our motorcycles. You should immediately pay for the repair and compensation. Yeah, that was probably it. That's our offer. What do you say? We would be happy to listen to your opinion. Something like that?
ああ、ごめんなさい。さすがにそろそろ翻訳不能かも。
The irony. I know what they're trying to say, but somebody has to warn them about the way they park their motorcycles. It wouldn't be fair to those who obey the rules if there were no punishment for those who disobey them. This is an accident, sure, but it must also be God's will. But God, you can use me to punish these guys, but how will you compensate me later? I heaved a huge sigh. Of course, I wasn't afraid in this situation at all, because it wasn't a dangerous one for me. These 3 guys were yelling at the top of their lungs at a girl. They didn't look good doing it, and they had too many disadvantages. First, there was the difference in gender and in number of people. Even if I did something wrong, as men shouting at a woman, it didn't make them look like they were in the right. Added to that, there were 3 of them. It already looked like it was going to get violent. Second, the location. Taking a girl into a dark, narrow alleyway is already a bad idea, and on top of that, they're asking for money, not just an apology. Thanks to these facts, the public will be on my side. So this was a fight they couldn't possibly win. The only way for them to win would be to take my money before somebody finds out. Considering that, taking me to this narrow, secluded alleyway might have been a smart move, since fewer people will find out about the situation. I knew how slim their chances of winning were. From the very beginning, they picked the wrong girl. I am Mion Sonozaki now. It would be foolish to mug her in Okinomiya. Soon enough, the people of Hinamizawa would notice me and gather around. They don't spare mercy for their enemies no matter what. The punks didn't know this area well. If they did, they would have known how silly it was to rob Mion. Plus, the alleyway isn't as empty as they assumed. This side street is a shortcut which local people frequently use on their way home. In the late afternoon, many people will be passing through here. That time had almost arrived. If I held off a little longer, the street would soon be filled with people. Then the punks would have to go away. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to wait in order to win. This was a simple fight like that. While they could absolutely hurl abusive language at me or lift me up by my collar, they weren't actually going to resort to violence. Cheers to the educational system for ingraining the ladies first mindset. But as a wicked person, I wanted to toy with them a bit, even though I could win this by waiting. I wanted to paint them as more villainous and drive them into a corner that would be even hard to talk their way out of. That demonic desire was rearing its horns. To put it plainly, I would only need to act as the poor, helpless victim a little further, like the pathetic, pitiful, tragic heroine everyone wants to sympathize with. In a case like this, I shouldn't start crying immediately because they would get nervous and draw back. If it were truly a threatening situation, that would work, but I needed something different here. I would pretend to be strong at first. In fact, I thought, why don't I challenge them? And eventually, I would start trembling, my voice would fade, and I would get tears in my eyes. It would be even better if I played the role of a strong girl who's slowly giving in to fear. Mion and I are probably the only ones capable of pulling that kind of stuff off. Well, I'm probably better than her.
そんなにしつこく言わなくてもいいでしょ。悪かったって言ってるじゃないですか。
I talked back with little hesitation. Am I getting tears yet? Yes. By the way, I've heard men can't shed tears on command. I feel sorry for them. The three punks faltered a bit due to my sudden change in attitude, but they soon started yelling at me again. I had to keep it going. That way, they would blatantly look like they were picking on a helpless girl.
もう許してください。
なんだよこら。さっきまでの伊勢はどこ行ったんだよ、にゃろ。
そんなのだって。
It looked like they were laying off a bit. Did I overdo it a little? It would be boring if they let me go now. At that moment... There he is. See what he looks like. A boy around my age appeared. He was skinny. He looked weak. He looked younger than he probably was. He also looked smart. He bravely glared at the punks. The punks turned away from me to face the boy instead. The boy looked a bit agitated when the punks started yelling at him. They sure were ruthless. But the boy must have known that from the beginning. He must have known that he was going into a dangerous situation, yet he didn't hesitate. He must have wanted to shout back at them, but he had probably never used that kind of language in his life. So he couldn't have expressed his feelings out loud. He might have not even known what to say. So he just kept on glaring at them, to let them know that he wasn't going anywhere. The three punks, though, might have thought he was just lost for words in his fear, but I knew different. The boy was overpowering them without nothing but his will. The punks were losing, so they resorted to violence. They grabbed him and knocked him down. They hit, kicked, and tossed him around. It looked painful, but I knew it was his victory. In the end, local passers-by stopped the punks. They made no further fuss and just went away. The boy stood up. He was covered in dust. He smiled when our eyes met and asked me if I was alright. He didn't look particularly okay himself though.
あんたもよくもまあ勝てない喧嘩を買う人ですね。次からは勝てる算段がついてから喧嘩を買うことを深くお勧めしますけどね。
最初は迷ったよ。
He laughed, saying that he was watching from the beginning. That meant he had the option to walk away. But instead, he worked up the courage and stepped in.
そういうのは勇気って言わず、身の程知らずとも言うかな。
ミオンは口が減らないね。助けてくれてありがとうくらい言ってくれよ。泣いてたじゃないか。
別に泣いてなんかいません。あれはちょっとした演技で。
いいよ、演技でも。
ちょっと信じてないでしょ。私が本当に泣き出すと思いますか？
思わないよ。天下御免の園崎ミオンが不良にいじめられて泣き出したなんて誰。
何を笑ってるんですか？全然信じてないでしょ。私が半泣きなんてするわけない。
信じるから信じるから。
I realized one thing. He must be one of Sister's friends. He didn't seem to realize I'm her twin. He thought I was Mion with a different hairstyle. Mion and I had to live separately since before we went to elementary school. Mion was in Hinamizawa, and I was in Okinomiya. I lived in a totally different environment from her, so it's not strange that people don't know me. Actually, only very few people know I exist. I almost told him that I'm not Mion, but I managed to stop myself. Shion shouldn't be here. He's from Hinamizawa. It wouldn't be good if he thought he saw a Mion lookalike in Okinomiya, so I had to act like Mion. Dealing with him could be more difficult than handling those punks.
でもま、ミオンにも少しは女の子らしいところがあったんで安心したよ。
なんだか妙に引っかかる言い方ですけど、つまりはどういう。
ミオンのことだから、なんだか珍妙な憲法でも使って瞬く間に撃退してしまうんじゃないかって期待し。だから泣き出した時は正直驚いた。
だからあれは泣き真似だったって言ってるじゃないですか。さっきから人の話ちゃんと聞いて。
He gently put his hand on top of my head and stroked it as if stroking a kitten. I could remember somebody doing that to me when I was little, but it had been quite a while since somebody stroked my head. I didn't know what to do. Why did it make me so embarrassed? My face reddened all at once, and I couldn't say anything.
バカにしてます？ひょっとして。
I stuttered in embarrassment. He looked calm, as if he was used to doing this.
なんでもいいよ。よかったじゃないか。
よかったって何がです？
無事で。
He smiled while he kept stroking my head. His smile looked divine. He wasn't going to stay for long. He had already saved me from those guys after all.
じゃあ、僕は行かなきゃならないから。そろそろ行くね。
I wanted to go through all the steps of meeting someone for the first time, but he didn't. As far as he was concerned, he just saved a friend from danger and wanted to leave quickly to avoid seeming pretentious. He and Mion must be friends who knew each other well. So I couldn't bring myself to ask, "What's your name?" Mion's friend smiled once again. His smile looked as refreshing as a clear blue sky. This time, he smiled a bit mischievously.
安心しなよ。ミオンが泣いてたなんて誰にも言わないから。もっとも言ったところで誰も信じないだろうけどね。天下無双の委員長が泣いてたなんて絶対誰も信じない。
He patted the dust off his butt once again. He walked back to the sunny main road away from the dark alley. It doesn't look very dark, to be honest with you. Then he turned around.
じゃあまた学校でね。
学校で。
He disappeared into the brightly lit street. I continued to sit in the gloomy alleyway. I could no longer see him. I was just staring absent-mindedly at the bright light. That was the first time I met Satoshi-kun. I'm not even allowed to walk freely under the sun. I met a boy on a sunny day. How come a perverse girl like me fell in love with his innocence?
そりゃあサトシだよ、サトシ。その特徴的な雰囲気と気安く頭を撫でる癖は間違いないね。
サトシくんって言うんだ。
The boy from earlier is called Satoshi Hojo-kun. Mion said that he's always daydreaming, so she didn't believe that he saved me at first.
普段はしっかり者の妹にいろいろと尻を叩かれてるな。
妹がいるんだ。
妹はサトコって言ってね。なかなか面白いやつだよ。なかなか悪知恵が働くしね。そのくせ追い詰められると泣くし。見てて退屈しない子だね。まあ最近はいろいろとあってね。ちょっと調子を落としてるけど。
His sister came up naturally in the conversation. I tried to soak up every scrap of information about Satoshi-kun. Why? Why am I trying to ask so much about him? As I asked myself that, the feeling I got when he stroked my head came back to me. I must have been blushing.
もしもし、シオン？
ごめん、聞いてる聞いてる。
そもそもね、サトコがおばと折り合いが悪いらしいんだよね。サトシは大人だから、その辺はうまく立ち回ってるんだけどさ、サトコは嫌なことがあると素直に表情に出しちゃうからね。
What Sis told me was very interesting. She told me that the parents of Satoshi-kun and his little sister are dead. Satoshi-kun and Satoko are now living with their uncle and aunt. They don't seem like very respectable people. They're always fighting and the uncle is cheating on the aunt. He mostly lives with his mistress. Satoshi-kun and Satoko entered into that unwelcome environment. What surprises me the most is the fact that Satoshi-kun's parents were the Hojo couple who were the leaders of the pro-dam activists. That fact must have added something to the situation. I don't know what kind of stance the uncle and aunt took during that dam conflict, but they must have taken some indirect blows. Satoshi-kun's parents died after bothering them so much and even left them their children. The uncle and aunt obviously can't love those kids. Things have gotten worse this past year too. Women can really be nasty bullies. Sometimes it doesn't matter who they're bullying, even if it's just a kid. On top of that, women tend to care less about propriety than men. As a result, Satoko seems exhausted with it all. I imagine Satoshi-kun bravely protecting his little sister, just like when he saved me.
なら、サトシくんも普段は疲れてるってことになるのかな。
There's a whole lot of assumptions in that bitch though.
サトコがおばにいじめられるたびに、きっとサトシくんは妹をかばってると思う。妹が疲れるのと同じくらい、サトシくんも疲れてると思うのは、私の考えすぎ？
どうだろうね。
Had I said something wrong? Mion sounded a bit taken aback. So that meant Mion can't tell how he's feeling, because he's always wearing that blank look, so she never considered it. How can she be that insensitive even though she's around him all the time? I was amazed to realize that.
まあそんな話はいいや。で、彼は普段はどんなことをしてるの？文系みたいだから読書とか好きなわけ？
想像に漏れずに普段は読書して過ごしてるよ。最近読んでる本はね、なんて言ったかな。
I continued asking about him. What he likes, dislikes, what he thinks about. I asked Sis all these questions because I wanted to know more about him. It was the first time I had ever been interested in somebody. I didn't want to admit that I had feelings like that. Did I fall in love just because of a stroke on the head? Am I stupid or what? I mean, Shion did seem quite interested in Keiichi, and Keiichi did like to pat people on their heads, so I mean, hey. When I remember the feeling of his hand on my head, my heart feels tingly. I tried doing it myself, but it didn't feel the same. I'm stupid. What am I doing? Stroking my own head? Idiot.
おねえ、私もうダメだ。バカになっちゃった。
え？何を突然気色悪い声で笑い出して。
お姉にはわかるまい、この気持ち。
When would I see him again? I felt as if my suffocating life had finally grown brighter. Could that be why Shion joined the baseball team? Because Satoshi was there as well. That makes sense, actually. The life I lived was really beginning to suffocate me. I couldn't go out freely, and I always had to make arrangements with Mion before going to work. I had thought my life would improve after escaping from the school, but in reality, it wasn't that easy. It's not healthy to live like this for too long, without any friends to hang out with. I felt like I was hibernating. I had started to feel the dangers of falling into boredom. All I could think of now was Satoshi Hojo-kun's face. I had only met him briefly, but my encounter with him had a great impact on my new life. I felt like something exciting was going to happen. Really, I was hyped up like a little kid. The more I thought about it, I realized I had been thinking about him a lot lately. This might be a crush. I felt a little ridiculous idolizing him in such a romantic way though. Then out of the blue, I got a chance to see him again.
あれ？
I saw a familiar face at twilight in the park. He was sitting on the swing. He looked like he was zoning out, or maybe deep in thought. He didn't notice me even though I was right in front of him. I reminded myself to speak and act like Mion before talking to him.
Hey!
What?
何やってんのこんなとこでさ。
ミオンか。びっくりしたな。
そんなに驚いてるようには見えないけどね。さっきからいたんだけど、ずっと気づかなかった？
そうなのかい？ごめん、気づかなかったよ。
He smiled self-derisively and shrugged. He looked depressed, like something was troubling him.
何か悩み事でも？聞いて楽になるものなら聞くし、力になれるものなら惜しまないけど。
いや、別に。
私はサトシ君には一個借りがあるからね。それとも何？おじさんじゃ力になれないと思ってるわけ？見くびられたもんだな。
別にミオンの力を借りたら。
ほう、それは何？私ごとき女の手は借りたくないってこと？
Thinking him unfair, I puffed up my cheeks in a sulky gesture. Satoshi-kun noticed that and smiled.
違うんだよミオン。僕に実力がなくて、ここ一番で打てなかったってだけのことなんだよ。
I mentally rifled through all the information about Satoshi-kun that Sis had given me. He doesn't look like much of an athlete, but apparently Satoshi-kun belongs to a junior baseball team. They're called the Hinamizawa Fighters. I doubt he's very skilled since I didn't hear much about his contributions to the team. Or maybe that's why he doesn't tell many people that he's a member. Given how down he's felt as a result of messing up though, he must be fairly dedicated. I deduced all that from what Sis told me, and carefully chose my words so as to sound like her.
なんだ、そんなことで落ち込んでるわけ？
そんなことでって簡単に言ってくれるな、ミオンは。
I pat his back while chuckling. Satoshi-kun would probably call me insensitive. I knew I should listen to him rather than trying to cheer him up. Acting like sis was probably the wrong thing to do in this case, but I had no choice. This was just how she would react in this situation.
それなら落ち込むんじゃなくて、なお一層練習に打ち込んで次のチャンスを目指すのが適当ってもんでしょうが。こういう時は練習しかないよ、練習。まあサトシ君に相手のピッチャーに小細工をしてまで勝ちたいという執念があるなら、おじさんいろいろと協力できるかもしれませんけどね。
ずるしても何の意味もないよ。はあ。
Satoshi-kun hung his head after letting his regrets out with a big sigh. Surrender, defeat, resignation were all visible in that gesture of his.
諦めがいいのか未練たらたらなのか。やっぱり男に生まれたからには一度くらいは晴れ舞台でスターになってみたいでしょう。
Satoshi-kun grinned and said yes.
もちろんヒーローを目指すのが花だけど、それが目的で野球をやってるわけじゃないよ。純粋にボールを投げたり打ったりするのが楽しいからやってるんだよ。ミオンでもそういうのわかるよね。
おじさんはそういうのはあんまわかんないかな。私は結果が一番であるならどんな種目でも大好きだし、一番になれないのに大好きなんてものはあんまりよくわかんないね。
ミオンらしい答えだな。
Having realized that I'm trying to make him feel better, he laughed along. He didn't look depressed anymore. I guess he was just feeling down because of the game. He wasn't as depressed as I thought. Maybe I just jumped to conclusions when I saw him sitting alone in the park.
でもミオンは一番になるためにいろいろと努力をするからね。それは偉いと思うよ。
He smiled gently and stood up. Then he started stroking my head. All of a sudden. I totally wasn't prepared for that. I thought this when he did this last time, but... How can he stroke somebody's head so easily? I felt like I had turned into a little kid. Memories from kindergarten came to mind. My face must have been red. I felt embarrassed, but also like I was in heaven. Satoshi-kun stroked me as though petting a cat. I was blushing with my eyes closed. I felt helpless, like a girl being treated by the dentist with her mouth open and her eyes shut. Satoshi-kun didn't seem to notice my feelings at all. He didn't seem to care. I hate him. With my eyes still closed, I waited for him to finish. He suddenly withdrew his hand.
じゃあ僕はそろそろ帰るよ。おばさんに野球の帰りに買い物をしてくるよう頼まれてるから。
My voice faltered. I was so embarrassed.
買い物なら私も行くとこ。夕飯の買い物。
あれ、ミオもお手伝いさんが全部やってくれるって言ってなかったっけ？
Shoot, I messed up. In the main Sonozaki house, the maids do everything. Therefore, Mion hardly goes grocery shopping, and she has bragged to some people about that. I should have known better. Still, it wouldn't be too hard to find an excuse.
町に遊びに来るつもりでいたから、買い物を私が引き受けてきたわけよ。お分かり？
ミオンにしては珍しいね。普段はそういうのめんどくさいって言って嫌がりそうなのに。
そういうのを余計なお世話って言います。頭撫でないで。
Satoshi-kun seemed to be having fun with how embarrassed I would get when he patted me. Anyway, I managed to talk my way out of it. He didn't seem to really care about the details. While walking with Satoshi-kun in the shopping district of Kami Ishiki, it suddenly occurred to me, why had I messed up? I had known Mion would never go grocery shopping. What an amateurish mistake. Did I make that mistake when I was pretending to be Mion? No. I was probably speaking as Shion. I couldn't keep lying to myself. I had to just admit it. It was simply because I wanted to spend as much time with Satoshi-kun as possible. It was easy to see why I was so attracted to him. I had found something intriguing in my boring life, and I didn't have to feel tense because he thought I was somebody else, etc., etc. His easygoing nature made him fun to be around, and his habit of patting people on the head was fun too. From these symptoms, I could tell I was embracing the feeling of love. I was casually just enjoying that feeling. It wasn't that I fell in love with him. I was just having fun. I could simply spend some fun time with Satoshi-kun without having to think too much.
ブロッコリーってどれだっけ？緑だっけ？
Or the blue one.
黄色だっけ？
サトシ君、そっちはカリフラワー。サトシ君ってひょっとしてキャベツとレタスの区別がつかないタイプ？
それはひどいよ。これでも精一杯区別してるつもり。
Satoshi-kun stared at the heaps of broccoli and cauliflower. After thinking for a while, he reached out for the wrong one.
それ違う。サトシ君の買い物は見ててハラハラしますね。見てるこっちは楽しいけどさ。
参ったな。サトコと一緒の時にも迷うんだよ。ブロッコリーとカリフラワーはどっちが何色だっけってね。
あんたら兄弟2人揃って面白すぎです。
Sis had told me that Satoshi was a flaky big brother to his nagging little sister. I hadn't met Satoko, but she must be having a tough time dealing with Satoshi-kun. He stumbles over everything he buys after all.
それは調理塩。胡椒とか混じってますから、卓上塩とは異なります。
え、そうなの？ほら、確か理科の実験で塩と胡椒を分離するのを確か。
言い訳はいいから棚に戻す。こっちが普通のお塩ね。で、次は
ミオンがいてくれると買い物が楽で助かるよ。
サトシ君、頭良さそうに見えて社会生活に支障ありすぎです。
Damn. Well, we can at least deduce that there is no way this motherfucker left on his own accord, right? Motherfucker can't tell the difference between broccoli and cauliflower, and he doesn't seem very confident in his abilities, so
もう少しお勉強した方がいいと思います。
I think he might be locked up in that Sonozaki basement.
それはひどいな。あった。これかな。ひゅいひゅい。
だからそれは違う。
I wonder if Shion ever tells him that she is Shion to him, or is he going to still think that it's Mion until the very end, and he's like, okay, I'm developing feelings for this person that is actually Shion, but it turns out to be Mion, and Mion takes advantage of that, and blah, you get shanked, bitch.
何でもカゴに放り込む前に値段と何人分かをよく確認する。
My first impression of Satoshi-kun was that he was strong and reliable. Yeah, me too. But the more I spoke to him, the more surprised I was at how clumsy and unreliable he was. How do I put it? It was hard to leave him alone. He was dangerous on his own. If he wasn't careful, he might start wondering, do you cross the street when the light is red? Or was it green? And gets himself run over by a dump truck. Switch wrap.
1780円になります。スタンプカードはお持ちですか？
はい、あります。
すみません。ちょっと見当たらないんで今度でいいです。
I finished checking out, ignoring Satoshi-kun as he fished through his wallet full of receipts.
ひどいなミオン。スタンプちゃんと押さないともったいないよ。
あんた、夕暮れ時のお買い物ラッシュの時にのんびりと財布を漁ってスタンプカードなんか探さない。後ろに大勢待ってるんだから。私たちの後ろで海線山線のおばさま方が早くしなさいざますって目でギロギロ睨んでたの気づいてなかったんですか？
Mion wouldn't care.
そういう時はレジ前に並んでる時からあらかじめ用意しておくの。
そうか。いいことを聞いたよ。
ちなみにここでのことだけじゃないですからね。バスに乗る時もそう。サトシ君、バスを降りようとして料金を入れる時、 その時になって初めてお財布を開けて小銭をちまちまと探して後ろの人を詰まらせて待たせてるでしょう。
Y'all motherfuckers pay when y'all get off?
みんな僕を追い抜いて勝手に料金を入れてるかな。
はあ、それはね、すっごーく周りに迷惑をかけているのです。
Easy, now you're gonna push him into depression for real.
そういうのはあらかじめ用意しておくのがマナー。わかりました？
わかったよ。今日のミオンは怖いな。
Satoshi-kun smiled as if patronizing me. I couldn't believe it. He was definitely the type who made women want to protect him. Sure, he was fine as he was when he had a busybody like me around him, but I couldn't stop worrying about whether he would be able to function in society without someone like that nearby. We got plastic bags and sorted out what we bought. Satoshi-kun put a pack of tofu at the bottom of the bag. I slapped his hand and put a milk carton instead.
はい、これで OK。 これで台所で買い物袋を広げてお母さんに仰天されなくて済みますからね。
ありがとう。助かったよ。僕はどうも買い物が苦手でさ。
買い物だけ正直におっしゃい。嘘冗談。
I had realized a few things while I was spending time with him today. He's not just bad at shopping, the motherfucker can't walk straight either. He's also chronically clumsy. In general, you could call him a slow thinker. That meant, when he stepped into a quarrel with the punks, he must have needed a lot of courage. He might be a simpleton, but he's not stupid. He's aware of his weaknesses, so he must have been aware of the danger in that situation. He could have chosen to walk away even though I was in trouble, but he chose to be a man and stepped in. That was really admirable of him.
えらい。サトシ君は頑張ったよ。いい子。
なんだよ。急に人の頭を
サトシ君が一人でお買い物ができましたでしょう。なで。
ミオン、僕のことすっごいバカにしてるだろ。
してないよ。お家一人で帰れるかな？道わかる？
やっぱりバカにしてる。
Satoshi-kun's sulky face flushed red. Nah, he's just too kawaii. At that point, I caught a glimpse of a billboard from the corner of my eye. Piano lessons, College 6. Abacus class. Junior baseball team, members wanted. It was a posting for the team Satoshi-kun belonged to. It showed the day, time, and place of their next practice. By then, I knew just how flaky he was. I figured he must be just the same when playing baseball. Satoshi-kun realized that I was reading the posting. He looked uncomfortable and walked away.
今サトシ君は思った。頼むからミオン、野球やってるとこまで来ないでくれよ。図星？そのムーってのはつまり何さ？図星ってことでしょ。
Satoshi-kun became quiet after mumbling something. It seemed like he couldn't say anything back since I had been right on the money. Satoshi-kun, you're just too cute. I don't think going silent is a good way to dodge the issue. Well, that might have just been the way innocent people like him would react in a situation like that.
じゃあね、サトシ君、暗くなりかけてるから気をつけて帰ってね。
ミオンは一緒に帰らないのかい？ひなみざわ。
私はもうちょっと寄るとこありますんで、気にしないで先に帰ってください。
僕の買い物を手伝ってもらったんだから、今度は僕が手伝う。
大丈夫っていうか、サトシ君が何を手伝うおつもりで？人の手伝いする前に自分が手伝われなくて買い物できるようになっといてくださいな。
Damn.
今日のミオンはひときわ意地悪かな。
He seemed to have some pride at least. He looked a bit upset that he was being teased by a girl. But in contrast, I felt very satisfied. As a result, I forgot to keep my guard up.
でも手伝ってくれてありがとうね。本当に助かったから。
While wearing a bright smile, Satoshi-kun suddenly started stroking my head again. I know he's teasing me, but I can't reject him. He keeps doing it only because he's realized I won't resist.
じゃあね、ミオン。暗くならないうちに用事を済ませてね。また明日、学校で。
また明日学校でね。
In fact, I wouldn't see him tomorrow at all. It felt awkward, but I had to settle for that. I had to thank Sis for letting me use her name. After I separated from him, I found myself giddy and washing to see him again as soon as possible. I want to know more about him. I couldn't wait for my next chance to see him. Actually, maybe there was something I could do, just like when I obtained my freedom from St. Lucius. I could choose how to live my life. Whatever. It wasn't that complicated. I just wanted to tease him more. I wanted him to stroke my head more. And, whatever. I already knew the schedule for his baseball team. My aunt finally stopped her hysterical screaming. Today was just like any other day. I can't remember what set her off. Whatever it was, she changed subjects constantly anyway. It didn't matter. She went on past midnight again. The urge to sleep was pounding the back of my head. Once Satoko had been able to relax, she fell down on the spot and started sleeping, still clinging onto my sleeve. I carried Satoko to the bedroom and laid out our futons.
ほら、サトコ。布団が敷けたよ。布団に入りな。
Satoko crawled in like a worm. She stopped moving when she was inside. I wished I could go to bed too, but I couldn't. My aunt asked me to do some chores. I had to get toothpaste after school tomorrow. I had to write it down somewhere. I had to make rice for lunch tomorrow. I set the timer. Right. I also had to repile the towels in the bathroom. That was the reason for today's scolding. My aunt will get mad if everything isn't done the way she wants. Oh, and there was something else. I was working at the grocery store the next day. They wanted me to bring an apron. Did we even have an apron in this house? I had never seen one. My aunt will be sleeping when I go to school, so I won't have time to ask her. What should I do? Since Mion helped me get that job, I don't want to screw it up again. In that case, why don't I ask Mion about it at school? She might lend me one. Was there anything else? I was envious of Satoko because she got to go to bed. It was pathetic that I felt that way. Damn. Alright. And that was the third chapter of Arc 5 of Higurashi When They Cry. That's gonna be it for me. It was a shortish episode, but hey. I'll see you guys next time. Alright? I'm out of here, man. Love y'all. Deuces.